Hi everyone, welcome to Smart Tech. This is Kiran. Today's topic is about how to append the same dataset 100 times in SAS. Let's quickly look into the topics which we are going to discuss. The first one will be proc append, then we will be discussing on percent %do loop, then we will be discussing on the concept of point equal to option and nobs equal to option and nested do loop. And by understanding these five concepts, we will be applying those concepts and then we will be appending the same data set 100 times in two different methods. Now let us quickly look into proc append. In proc append, data gets appended to base data set from the data set. To understand it better, let us go through an example. Here we have two dataset. The first one is want dataset and second one is have dataset. And here is the syntax of proc append. So we are going to append the data which is there in have dataset to the dataset in the want. So we write base equal to want, data equal to have, and this is the syntax for proc append. And once I proc print, this is the result we see. So basically proc append, what it does, it appends the data to base data set. In here it's a want data set from the data set. Now I would like to discuss what happens when there is no base data set. When there is no base data set, it gets created from data set. Let's try to understand it better by an example. Here we have a data set which is known as have, and when we try to do a proc append and we have set base equal to want 1 but the base table is not there, in that case what happens is it creates want 1 table and it gives a note in the log saying appending work dot have to work dot want 1. Note, base table does not exist. Data file is being copied to base file. And then here we have proc print. And then what we see is we see the dataset being created. The point I want to emphasize here is whenever we don't have base table, it creates a base table. Now let us discuss about iterative percent %do loop. What iterative percent %do loop does is it iterates how many ever time we mention and it does a particular action that many times we mention. Now let us try to understand this by an example. Here we are iterating 1 to 10 times, that is on the total we are iterating 10 times. The action we are doing is we are trying to put something in the log. Here that is we want to put this is nice into the log. So we are going to do that 10 times. On iterative do loops, I have made a YouTube video and I will also put this in the description. I have very detailedly explained what iteration means and what iterative do loop in general does. But the bottom line I want to explain in this slide is it is just we are repeating something any number of times we mention in our do loop. And also percent %do loop cannot be in open code, so we need to wrap the whole thing in a macro and then execute macro to get the results we want. Now let us try to understand how we can use our percent %do loop and proc append and append the dataset 100 times. Here we have our dataset which is data have with 4 records. Now I want to create a dataset want with these records repeated for 100 times. Now let us see here. This is how I want. Say the dataset hello, hi, howdy, namaste records. are repeated again and again. I've just shown for three or four uh, iterations, but the idea is to repeat it. So how we can do that? We can do simply by doing percent do I equal to 1 percent 2 to 100, and we are going to do the proc append step. And what happens in here is, first time when it runs proc append, it creates a base dataset because the want dataset is not there. And you can see from the log here also, it says that base dataset does not exist. Data file is copied to base file. So once the first iteration is over, we have our want dataset. It goes back to second iteration. It appends the data from have to want. Here again, I have included some part of log wherein it shows that four more observations have been added. Now we have eight observations and one variable. So it has added four more rows which are there in the table. So again, one more proc append. It's trying to add this all the data set again. So 100 times it will do the same thing. So basically, to sum it up, what we are trying to do here is we are trying to append the dataset 100 times by using a percent do loop. Another important point to remember here is, as percent do loop cannot work on its own in open code, we need to wrap up the whole thing in a macro and then we need to execute the same. Now let us try to understand concepts for our second way of appending the data to itself 100 times. The first concept is concept of point equal to variable option. Point equal to variable option creates temporary variable. Numeric value of this temporary variable determines which observation is read. Now let us try to understand what does this two sentence means through an example. Here we have a data set which has four records. If I want to read just first and third records, I can do it through point equal to temporary variable option. This is how we can do it. We will first indicate in the set statement point equal to a temporary variable, and we mention the temporary variable name in do loop, and we say we want first and third record. So we are going to give the numeric value, and this numeric value goes and picks up the record 1 and 3. And one notable important point in point equal to variable option is we have a stop statement, because point equal to variable just picks up the random records, so it does not know the end of file. Now let's try to understand what nops equal to variable option. Nops equal to temporary variable option creates a temporary variable. It has the value of total number of records. Now let us try to understand again through an example. Here we are having the same data set, and what we are trying to do is, here we are going to capture nops equal to total records. Here the total records is our temporary variable. We can capture the temporary variable value into a permanent variable. Here we can see that permanent variable value has been captured and the value is 4. Bottom line, nops equal to variable option just picks up the total number of records. Now let us see how we can use point equal to and nops equal to. Here I would like to explain this by an example. Here we have a data set which has 12 records, and we want to pick up every third record. How we can do that? We can do that by using point equal to and nobs equal to. So as I said earlier, point equal to points to the record we mentioned in the do loop here, and then nobs we can capture and we can use here. So if I want to pick up every third record, I can say 3 to, there are 12 records, so 3 to 12 by 3. So this whole equation becomes as follows. Pick any third record from third record to 12th record by 3. So it picks up C, F, I, M. So that's what we can see here. Again, we have stop statement. So point equals to helps us to pick whatever record we want. Nops equal to here helps us to go till the end. And also we have stop statement. As I said, point equal to is a random access. It cannot see end of the file. So we always need to have a stop statement. Otherwise, it will loop forever. I have made a very extensive video on how to use point equal to nops equal to, and I will keep the same in the description too. Let us lastly see one more concept, and then finally I would wrap up. So in this concept I would like to discuss how a nested do loop works. So here is an example of nested do loop wherein we have an outer loop and an inner loop. And what we are going to do is here we are going to capture the hello world value into a variable. And then how does this loop works? The first outer loop, which is do j equal to 1 to 2, it starts from here, it starts from 1, and then it iterates all the 5 of the inner loop, and once it is done it goes to 2, and then it iterates for 5 times for the inner loop. So again here, once the data set is proc printed, we can understand it even much better. So here the inner loop, when it is in the first iteration, it runs for, sorry, outer loop when it's in the first iteration runs for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the iterations of inner loop. And then once they are done, it goes back to the outer loop and it starts again with the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth of inner loop. And then once both these loops are done, the whole process will end. And I have made a very extensive video also again on nested do loop, and I will put the same in the description too. Now let us see how we can use our knowledge of point equal to, nops equal to, and nested do loop to append data multiple times. And I will be illustrating the whole thing through an example here. Here we have our dataset have, and we want to append it multiple times and create a new dataset. So we have our code here, and let's look into the parts of code which are interesting to us. Here we have point equal to p and ops equal to n. We are capturing them in our temporary variable and we are referencing them in the do loop here. So our do loop for point becomes 1 to n. N means all records. That means in this case it is 4. So do point equal to 1 to 4. So we can easily run the whole records once. But we are wrapping up this in another loop which is outer loop, and we are saying the outer loop do I equal to 1 to 100. So what does this do? When it's in the first iteration, it runs for 1 to 4, which means all the records, and does the output, and it goes back to the outer loop and starts second iteration, and then it appends 4 more records, and it goes on and on and on till 100th iteration, and it outputs and appends all the data. If you see here the proc print of the partial result. Now I would like to show the code for appending data multiple times using the both the ways which I have shown in the slides earlier. Here is our data set, and then the first way of appending is wherein we are going to use proc append, and the second way of appending is where we are going to use do loop, and we are going to do multiple outputs, and here we are also using point equal to nobs equal to options, and let's quickly run it. Here we can see the results. The table which had 4 records, we have appended it like 100 times. So hello, hi, howdy, namaste, hello, hi, howdy, namaste, it has got appended. And if we go on, we can see that it has been appended 100 times, as the number of observations here we have is 400. The second way of appending also get the similar results. Finally, I would like to conclude by understanding concepts of proc append, do loop, points equal to, nobs equal to, nested loop. We can append the same data to itself 100 times or how many ever times we want. If you like this video, please share, subscribe, and give a thumbs up. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.